journalist Samuel Addo by an officer of the Ghana National Fire Service. Yes, officers of the Ghana National Fire Service. Now, the Ghana National Fire Service issued a statement. They've been talking about why that happened. This morning, before I get onto the phone lines to speak to Suleiman Abrahima, who is Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, and Samson Lardy, who is a legal practitioner, let's first listen to the journalist.
So when I came, I made a report on the morning show. So after the report, I decided to approach the fire service men to also take their side of the story. But upon reaching where they were stationed, I saw them beating up, assaulting the civilians around. So I decided to capture the scene. So as I was capturing, one young fire service personnel approached me, and I introduced myself to him as a media personnel. So he went back. Then a few minutes, I saw them coming in their numbers, about 10 of them, including the guy who approached me. So they came, and then they held my neck, pulled my hands behind me, and then started assaulting me. They took my phone, torn my belt, and we took my phones and then the belt, even the belt that they torn, they took the belt away and then went away with my mobile phone.
Let's now hear from the public relations officer of the Ghana National Fire Service. Okay, so we don't have him yet. So let me just read the statement that the Ghana National Fire Service shared. And the statement says that the Ghana National Fire Service is taking note of a viral video circulating on social media which allegedly shows some yet to be identified fire service personnel assaulting a civilian whose identity has not been established. The service confirms that the alleged assault of a journalist is under police investigation and that the Ghana National Fire Service will fully cooperate to establish the facts. The video captures an altercation between firefighters and a suspected thief who had earlier attacked firefighters along with a group of accomplices at the fire scene. Management of the service has constituted a committee to investigate the incident thoroughly and establish all relevant facts. While the Ghana National Fire Service condemns attack on its personnel, it equally frowns upon any form of physical or verbal assault on civilians by its personnel, regardless of the level of provocation. The Ghana National Fire Service therefore urges the public to remain calm and exercise restraint while the investigations continue. The Ghana National Fire Service remains committed to professionalism, accountability, and transparency in the discharge of its mandate and will continue to cooperate with the media and relevant authorities to ensure accurate public information. Further updates on this matter will be communicated as necessary. And this is signed by Desmond Aka, Divisional Officer Grade 2, who is Head of Public Relations. Good. But let me get onto the phone lines now. Suleiman Abrahima is Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, and Samson Lardy is host of Newsfile and a private legal practitioner. Good morning, Suleiman. Good morning, Samson. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Great. Let me start off with you, Suleiman Abrahima. And this is not the first time we're talking about an assault on a journalist. I mean, we've been speaking about this. We've talked about assault on Latif Idris, Emmanuel Ante. We've talked about threats on lives of journalists who have covered, elections. And at the just ended, Ablekuma North election, a journalist was assaulted. Yes, the police acted, interdicted the officer. But then again, you have this still happening. First of all, what do you make of what happened and even the statement released by the Ghana National Fire Service?
Well, certainly what I've seen, and I believe that is what everyone else has seen, in terms of the incident involving the fire service personnel and other people, and I'm told it's in Kaswa, or it happened in Kaswa, is certainly despicable. It's, for me, an act that severely undermines the reputation and integrity, if any, of the Ghana National Fire Service. And yesterday, I saw some messages going around attributed to the PRO of the Ghana National Fire Service, in which he sought to justify what had happened. Initially, we were told that he said, well, what happened was not an assault, but an attempt to seize the phone of the journalist because the journalist was recording an incident without permission.
Yeah.
And quite clearly, that even made matters worse for me. And at that point, I told myself, well, perhaps I was wrong in my long-held assumption that the Ghana National Fire Service is a professional institution, because I don't think any professional institution would have its personnel conduct themselves in the manner that we all saw in the video, and then the entire institution, the establishment, coming out to speak and doing so in the way that the PRO had done yesterday. So for me, I think it is something that deeply undermines the reputation and the credibility of the Ghana National Fire Service. And I can only hope that the leadership of that institution would take the appropriate actions to redeem itself and to redeem the reputation of the institution, so that at least we can continue to have some hope that the fire service that we have is a professional institution. But what clearly happened is you look at it and you feel these are rogues.
Mm-hmm.
These are like some yo-yo men. The same way we see people sometimes abuse supposed thieves and met out instant justice to them, which we all condemn. And you would expect that if officers of the law feel that somebody has done something that is contrary to the law or contrary to whatever they think has to be the right thing, they would approach the situation based on the law and not begin to exert physical force as we saw it yesterday. And so I can only hope that the right measures are taken. And I've seen a statement issued by the media house that the journalist works for. We certainly are interested in this. And without any action, the impunity would continue. And impunity begets impunity. And if allowed, we would even perhaps see worse things in the future.
Now, before just listen to what the PR for the Ghana National Fire Service, Desmond Aka, said on the Pulse on Joy News yesterday.
Well, so what led to the vacation was that yesterday night, during the firefighting effort, this group of people came around just to have the field day to go and steal some of the affected traders' work, and the firefighters didn't allow them. So on about 5 different occasions, they had to call in the police to come and arrest some of them. So those who escaped the arrest of the police thought that the firefighters had denied them an opportunity to cut in on the unbent work of the traders, and therefore they felt they could organize themselves and come back to assault them. So during the process of the altercation, they managed to get one, and then in the process, a journalist wanted to film, but they took the phone and then handed him over to the police. So as we speak, the matter has been reported to the police station.
Stay there, because that's the area of concern for most people. Yeah. Why was his phone taken, and who took his phone?
Right, so let me take this opportunity to educate Ghanaians. Many a times we try to tell Ghanaians and even the public good, strong emergency things. Within the hot zone, we are supposed to maintain a minimum distance of about 20 to about 35 meters from the hot zone. So our men prevented the filming like that. Should there be any secondary explosion, or should there be any other secondary, fire erupting from the hot zone? That would have saved those people there. But we don't justify any form of attack.
But what does that have to do really with the phone of the journalist? If you want to secure the area, you could have warded off the civilians and even the journalists. But why seize his phone?
Yeah, so as trained officers, when they seize the phone, the best place to have gone to was the nearest police station, of which they did. They never assaulted anyone. And as I speak with you, we understand the phone has already been handed over to the journalist.
But why exactly was it seized in the first place? That's where I want, based on your initial briefing, why did they deem it fit to take the phone of a journalist on the ground doing his job?
We have the responsibility to protect people who throng the hot zone and ensure that they are not affected by the activities in the hot zone.
And his phone was a threat to fire service personnel. Is that the case?
We didn't want anybody to be affected. You know, for a fire scene of this magnitude, the hot zone becomes a security zone. It also becomes a safe zone that we need to protect that area. And therefore, if we suspect that anything untoward could affect the life of anybody there, we need to be able to protect such individuals. That is how come the person who was trying to even go inside the hot zone to even steal was denied the opportunity and was whisked away to prevent any bad situation from happening. And therefore, we needed to do that to even save the life of the journalist. So it wasn't that the journalist was assaulted, but we are happy that the incident has been reported to the police and investigation is underway. It is not going to be any difficult thing for us to be able to identify our own personnel. So if it is established that they have violated any laws of the country, internally we will deal with them and then also subject them to any law required so that they face the law so that it becomes deterrent.
You say you have not assaulted any journalist, but the journalist in question says otherwise. But I'm sure once this is subjected to an internal probe, we would get to find out what exactly happened. You agree with me that two wrongs do not make a right? You agree with me? You agree with me?
My sister, even the video that we are seeing, it is just a portion. It is just a portion of the video that we are seeing. What might have triggered the firefighters to even discipline the civilian, we are yet to know. And I am happy that investigations have begun. And I'm going to follow this investigation to the latter and ensure that the full fact on this particular incident will be made available so that at least we position the firefighter at its rightful position where the firefighter will be absolutely restored, will be respected, and will be allowed to do his work without any provocation.
So that's Desmond Aka, PR of the Ghana National Fire Service. And Samson, he talks about how the journalist was filming and as a way of, protecting people, they decided to seize his phone. In another instance, he talks about disciplining the civilian here. Samson, first of all, help us understand. Is there anything wrong with recording public events within a public space?
I think we have two problems now. Yesterday, the bigger issue was about that assault, very dastardly. We should not continue to hear these reports in a democracy. And democracy where you have a constitution that fully guarantees the rights of the journalist and actually gives the journalist an onerous obligation to report the things that the people ought to know, according to Article 21(1)(f). People have a right to know, and their right to know, remember, the people are the sovereign, beyond whom there is no power. The powers of government, according to the Constitution, are supposed to be exercised for and on behalf of the people and for their welfare. And the people have a right to know. That is why the journalist is there, to bring the events and the developments within the realm to the people who are the custodians of sovereign power. The Constitution continues to then clothe the journalists the right to do the work they do, and provides in Chapter 12 full array of protections that they are supposed to enjoy to hold the accountability and responsibility of the government to the people, and to not to be subjected to any criminal punishment for doing their work, including their editorial opinions. Now, if this officer is still at post, that should be our bigger worry. That he is deemed qualified as a public relations officer for a public institution, and in the full glare of the ocular proof of the assaults, the dastardly conduct of officers of the Ghana National Fire Service, he will say the things he says clearly shows that he's not fit to be in that office. So this morning, my expectation is to hear from the Ghana Fire Service, if they want to show that they are very responsible, is to indict this officer, interdict him, and put him through discipline, and perhaps find some refresher course for him to go through to learn to do his work as a PR. No journalist is required by any law, not the Constitution and not any statute, not any practice, international or local, to seek consent to film or record or gather information that is in the public. The development was in the public space. There were many people you saw gathering around and seeking to see what was going on. All of those people had a right to film what was going on without any interference, and the journalist had an elevated right to do that. He did not need any permission, and even if he had done wrong, nobody had the right to lay their hand on him, because even law enforcement does not have the right to beat and assault suspects of crime. Now, is it the case that in their attempt to prevent the journalists from filming, which was a wrong thing in the first place, the journalists refused, and having deemed it as a wrong, they attempted to effect an arrest, even if a citizen's arrest. They attempted to effect a lawful arrest, and this journalist was uncooperative. And if he was uncooperative, what they had to do was what they did. It's absolutely barbaric, and it should not be entertained, not in this republic. And to think that they had the guts and they dared to seize the journalist's recording device. Even the police, when they are dealing in law enforcement, our courts have pronounced over and again, and I've led people to court over these matters, and the courts have pronounced over and again that unless the item you intend to seize is evidence of crime, you cannot be seizing it. And even if you seize it as part of evidence of crime, you need an order of the court to access the item. Either it's a laptop or it's a phone. You don't have the right to breach the privacy of the individual by accessing the content of the phone. So at every turn, this was criminal. This was wrong. And I think we ought to be hearing from the leadership of the fire service in a more direct manner. And this guy should not be allowed to get close to any microphone at this time.
Let me bring in Suleiman at this, Desmond Aka, in justifying what happened. He talks about how the officer or the officers decided to discipline the civilian. And also, if you read the statement from the Ghana National Fire Service, they talk about how they haven't identified the officers in question. What do you read from the posting of the Ghana National Fire Service? Does it look like an institution that is, that wants to get to the bottom of this?
Well, two things, but let me say that these developments certainly reaffirms the standing of our National Fire Service institution. The fact that it may be an institution that is basically uncoordinated, an institution that is highly unprofessional, an institution that lacks the fundamentals of, a law enforcement establishment. Because, and of course, maybe this is why people continue to also talk about their inefficiency when it comes to their core mandate in terms of firefighting. This is a video that we've all seen. The personnel involved, their faces are seen.
Yeah.
Is it the case that the National Fire Service is saying we don't even know where these officers came from, which station they came from, and is it that and this didn't happen yesterday. Apparently this had happened, days before yesterday. So for the institution, and I wouldn't say it is the PRO. At this point, it is the institution. It is actually, because the PRO is essentially speaking on behalf of the institution and on behalf of the leaders of the institution. And this is such a significant matter that I don't think the leadership of the institution will say, well, we don't care, let the PRO just do whatever he wants to do or just put out any information that he wants to put out there. I think, like I said earlier, and I believe some of the things that Samson said attest to that or affirms that, this development perhaps calls for a re-examination of the entire establishment of the Ghana National Fire Service to be sure that this is really a professional institution as we want it to be. To say that, to even affirm that the officers were disciplining civilians, what does that really mean? That officers can, on the spur of the moment, just pick up somebody, beat the person up, and that. I think it is important for us to put out the fact that we are not saying all these because the person or the person involved is a journalist. Even if the person was just a trader, the person was a farmer, the person was a nurse or whatever it is, what happened ought not to have happened, especially by officers of the law. Because we even condemn, instant justice that is meted out to people, on the streets when somebody is alleged to have stolen and all of that. And when that happens, there's a fire service officer and so on, we expect that they would even come to the rescue of such persons. But now we have the fire service people actually being the perpetrators of this particular instant justice or mob justice, as we should call it. And as I said earlier, we can only look forward to the leadership of the institution taking the appropriate actions to redeem their own reputation, first of all, and that of the institution more importantly. But of course, that wouldn't end it. I should believe that the media fraternity should be interested in pursuing this matter, and as I said, we are certainly interested in this. I hope that we wouldn't get to a point where the journalist himself would now begin to do this whole thing about compromises. We've settled the matter behind the scenes and so on and so forth, because in the past we've had developments like that. These are matters that I think we should take seriously and pursue them to the fullest.
And Samson, has been more than 12 hours after the release of this statement, which indicated that the case itself was being investigated by the Ghana Police Service. Shouldn't you be hearing from the police by now?
Well, the police is not known to do such things. But it may be fine if they wanted to do anything like that. And being a lawyer who has been in the forefront of defending journalists, I can tell you that often the lukewarm attitude by police, prosecutors, when journalists are assaulted by public officials, particularly security officers, it's nothing to write home about. So often you will see at multimedia that whilst the criminal prosecution is ongoing and often goes on forever until subsequently often they are botched, we normally would take a civil process parallel, run a civil process, and the civil process will conclude with vindication and orders for public apology, written apologies, and compensation, however small they have been. Sule has been very unhappy about the amounts of compensation in this regard. So I don't know, but this should not be allowed to go. I've seen that the class media group have issued a statement. What we should not do in the media fraternity is continue to just, shout and say this is bad, this is wrong, and then we go to sleep. The officers actually had a duty. In the Fiapokua case that we did, the court held that the public officials actually have a duty to protect the journalists having come onto their premises or come to an event for which they are the ones who are superintending over. We see in this video ocular proof how people are hitting. There was one guy, I think they removed his clothes. He was left naked with just his boxer shorts or something of the sort, and he was being hit by some of these officers. And here you are, an officer, who doesn't fear God, is just telling lies. This is not the way I want to start my new year. Very terrible. I'm restraining myself in running a commentary on this, but it should go beyond just the usual commentaries as we are doing, condemnations, and then everybody goes to sleep. And this officer, nothing may happen to him, and those who are involved, nothing may happen to them. They repeat it over and again. So there ought to be some action so that this will not be repeated. Because let's be clear, under Ghanaian law and international conventions, journalists have the right to record public events without requiring consent, especially when public officials are involved. We must also observe due process, and these officers ought to have observed the due process. And let's give that education to them. Even if the journalist or a journalist, were suspected of any wrongdoing, you either effect a citizen's arrest, which you do and immediately hand the person over to the police, or the police would have had the authority to do the arrest. And then you are not allowed, never, to administer any punishment, not even the police. Punishment must only come through the courts, not through physical assault. So this is both criminal, and there can be civil remedies for it as well. And we want some accountability on the part of the Ghana Fire Service. The PRO's attempts to deflect responsibility, and I heard him trying to play this thing about when a fire service officer is manhandled, we are not concerned. Is it a fire service officer who has been manhandled and you brought it to media attention and we are not concerned? At this time, this is what we are talking about. So he should stop that. He was attempting to deflect responsibility, and that raises questions about the institutional culture. We have seen that often it is the security that are at fault in assaulting journalists, and so something must be done. And as I mentioned, there's need for, some training, for these people in how they handle media presence during emergencies. It's completely uncalled for.
Well, Samson, Lardy, and Yenini, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you also, Suleiman Abrahima, who's Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, for joining us this morning here on the Super Morning Show. So let's bring it in studio. And guys, you heard from Samuel, you heard from Desmond, you've heard from Suleimana and Samson. Desmond says they were only disciplining the civilian because he didn't have the permission to film. And once an area like that, once they get to an area like that, they're only protecting people. And so if you get in there, you could be engaged in some problems, some incident. And thus, it's important you don't engage in anything that could endanger your own life.
Guys, if Desmond Daka is not fired by the Ghana National Fire Service, the implication will be that the National Fire Service as an institution supports what has happened. That will be the implication. Because you see, not only did he speak on the pulse and say the things he said, but he is the one who signed the statement as well. So in essence, everything that has been said by the fire service came to us through this person, right? Now, let me give you a picture of what he's telling the people of Ghana. In essence, this is what he's saying. First, he says, what you saw in the video, that's not what happened. Don't believe the evidence of your own eyes. Fire service didn't assault anyone. Then he says, no, actually, we were beating suspects. We were illegally beating suspects. That's what we were actually doing. Then he says, in fact, these people that we beat, we don't recognize any journalist among them. But you know that journalist that we don't recognize amongst them, we actually seized his phone. The journalist that they don't think they deny beating, we actually seized his phone. Why did we seize his phone? Well, we were trying to protect him. He was in a blast zone and we needed to protect him. That's why we seized his phone. Please, if protecting me is going to result in me being beaten, I'd rather you don't protect me. I'd rather be unprotected than be beaten. And I'm sure I speak for every citizen when I say this. But the worst part of it is that after all this cacophonous messaging, including this weird claim that the guy was filming without permission, and so fire service believed that they had the right to seize his phone and manhandle him. The worst part of all of this is that at the end of it, then they come and tell us that they will investigate. They, the fire service, will investigate this. The people who are telling us that we shouldn't believe the evidence of our eyes, what we saw didn't happen. The people who admit that, we were just illegally beating suspects. We're not manhandling a journalist. We're just beating suspects. As if that is normal, standard operating procedure. The people who claim that when they are protecting you, it involves beating you. These people are now coming to investigate and tell us what. So personally, I believe that if the Ghana National Fire Service wants anyone in Ghana to have any kind of faith in them as an institution, step one should be to distance themselves from this person who has said all these ridiculous things about what we saw with our own eyes yesterday. Anything short of that means that the Ghana National Fire Service are in the full business of beating civilians and justifying it. I'm sure that's not the reputation that they want to have in this country. The only way around it is that they must distance themselves from that gentleman.
What about him?
Well, I think that the fire service needs to cooperate with the police. Let's get justice for the journalists. And like Samson said, Class Media Group and the journalists should also consider a civil action while the police investigates whatever they've done. My only thing I'll I will say is that when Suleiman was speaking, he spoke a lot about the competence of the fire service and their professionalism and everything. I, as a person, would not use this event to call into question the overall competence and professionalism of the Ghana National Service and how they've operated over the years, because some of their challenges are due to our consistent underfunding of the service when it comes to their operations and fighting fires. So I want to separate this event from their challenges as an institution when it comes to being able to deliver on their mandate. They have started a fire service TV, which shows that they are very serious about public communications. Based on that, they need to train their people across board, from PROs to the fire officers to their customer service people and everybody in the service, because the fire service is so unique that the problems they solve are usually problems of life and death and problems of property. Okay, so their public relations, their customer service should be top notch. And so I would advise the chief fire officer and a team cooperate with the police to the fullest, punish all those responsible. The PRO needs a lot of work on him. They need to go through their processes and ensure that the PRO, for misspeaking and for bringing the institution into disrepute with this particular event, also is dealt with appropriately. But they need to, as a matter of urgency, work on their PR systems, because this doesn't look good on them.
One of the things that Kojo says I agree with is that the National Fire Service is a very under-resourced institution. But some of these problems can be solved without much resources. Teaching people how to deal with people doesn't cost money. I mean, just teaching people how to deal with civilians, it doesn't cost money. You don't need to buy them equipment for them to know that you don't beat suspects. It's not equipment that they need to know that. So much as they are indeed a very under-resourced institution, and we, the media, the same media they are beating, are the ones who are always at the forefront calling for more resources for institutions like theirs, much as that is true, what they need to solve this problem and get them to operate at par, to be able to mix with civilized human beings and not beat us up, won't cost money. Just a little bit of training.
My reference to they being under-resourced is I just felt from Suleiman Abraham's submission largely that based on this institution, this event, the whole competence, professional credibility of the institutions was being called into question, right? But based on even my own experiences with the fire service, and they are properly captured on Facebook, whenever I see any event that requires the fire service to act and I call them, I get responses. And over the past 4 years, there was this event in Ogbojo. I had gone to see my carpenter. A house was burning. I called Medina Fire Service. In 15 minutes, they were there to put out the fire. About a month ago, on the Edukrom to Somanya Road, there was a crash. A vehicle had run into an electricity pole. I stopped there. I called fire service. In about 20 minutes, they were there. They got the people out. So I'm just saying that I felt a little from Suleiman's tone that the general credibility, professionalism, and everything of the fire service, it was like they've beaten something, so they're just a waste of an institution. That's how I felt.
Well, the truth is that, look,
that's why I'm saying let's deal with the issue on its own. Let's deal with the issue on its own. Civil action, criminal action, fire service, clean your house. Let's get everything done to ensure that this doesn't repeat itself again. But let's not conclude that based on this, the fire service.
Now, this is the effect. Forgive me just a moment. This is the effect of bad apples. Okay, some professions, and I said this the other time, some professions you can't afford to have bad apples because they will spoil the whole barrel. Some professions you can't have bad apples. I give the example. Imagine that an airline says, "Oh, most of our pilots are good, but we just have a few bad apples who like to crash into mountains." Is that acceptable? It's the same for the security services.
Okay.
We can't have bad apples.
Now, this is it for me. And this is why all of us should be concerned. You know, I hear people all the time, this is just one case. But this is a whole attempt to put fear in the very people that you expect all the time to do your job for you. Now, Samson started by talking about the role that, the Constitution itself gives to the fourth estate of the realm, journalists, the media, that the Constitution expects the media to hold people. So when it comes to holding the people in authority to account, that is the expectation the Constitution places, as the responsibility the Constitution places on the media. And that's a huge one. Okay? So where all institutions fail, the media cannot fail. However, the fear here is that if I fear that I'll be beaten, I would not go out there to cover stories. And so people use these things to actually cow the media into submission and into fear, and thus not go into certain places or report on certain issues. So you may probably think, but this doesn't concern, this is just one journalist who's been assaulted. But the next time, and I say, look, every time I've had a call from my mother, the advice always is to be careful of what you say. Be careful of what you say. And I'm sure she's not heard this, because if she had heard this, she probably would have called me and said, oh, be careful. Because the moment these things happen, then she will call you, oh, be careful. Know what to say, know what you don't have to say. And that's the only reason we must not let this thing go unchecked. For me, that's the only thing. Because look, if we let this go unchecked, well, look, Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. No, go. No, say, why do you do this? Why do you do that? End of story. I just found out in our laws that anytime you submit your accounts, you should indicate the recommendations of the Public Accounts Committee that you have incorporated in your accounts.
Yeah.
Law, we've passed law. You show us. Wait and see. The next meeting that they go, you feel like follow up and find out whether you would hear the Public Accounts Committee actually saying this. They won't say it. Now, the worst part, the Internal Audit Agency. I'm just using this to build a point. Internal Audit Agency. You said, oh, this is the institution that has internal auditors. They are supposed to ensure they monitor and control public expenditure. When they finish, then they say that before you send your reports to the Internal Audit Agency, the head of institution must sign.
The one you're auditing.
The one you're auditing must sign.
If he doesn't sign,
you have a problem. Then, we're not done. We're not done. The Public Procurement Act of this country says that by now, we should have seen all the procurement needs of all entities published by the Public Procurement Act. So when you go, and all this is just to ensure that by the time you come back and say you are going to engage in sole sourcing, at least we can find out that this is, an emergency.
Yeah.
Now, because all these institutions have failed, many of you have resorted to journalists. You've actually asked journalists every question. In fact, every time we get calls in this country, we are consistently reminded of how they do not hear journalists talk about basically everything. So in this country called Ghana, the people of Ghana see journalists as the people who must ensure total accountability in all spheres. But how do you expect that person to engage in that job when he fears for his life? My brother, how do you expect? So you listening to us today, think about it this way. Do you think that if at some point in time I fear that if I continue this job I'm going to die, I will continue? At some you may say, oh, die and you'll be a martyr. No, I won't. No, let's get serious. And let's get serious. You see, sometimes we do these things, we push, we sit back and think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but it matters. If you are concerned about yourself, I should also be concerned about myself, shouldn't I? Yep. Because I did not sign to be a journalist because I wanted to die. No. I signed on to be a journalist because I wanted to help in the development of this country. I want to help in the development of this country. and not to die. And I cannot, I mean, if in the line of duty, an accident, this is something that is preventable. Okay, this is avoidable. So this is something that nobody should wish for a journalist. And so let's all of us know this and join the campaign to make sure that for those whom we expect to do all the things that we should do in this country, including holding assembly members to account, including calling for a road construction, including noise pollution and everything, those people should feel safe to do the things they do. Because if we go to sleep, people will suppress them, and those in authority, once they know they can do this, they will suppress them. If it gets to the point that I think I can no longer do this, I will just write and say, okay, I am going home. Enough is enough. Is that what we want? No. That is not what we want in this country. So, for you listening, it is time to speak up. Let's not be silent. We cannot, because our silence, my brother, my sister, will be worse than anything else that we can do to this country.